So it seems there is a temporary end to my week-to-week masochistic streak with NXT 2.0. So far, I will not call this show a trash show. Not this episode. It was decent. It was decent for the reasons that it should have been decent. And it almost felt like a traditional NXT show. It felt like slightly like an NXT of old because there was actually wrestling on a wrestling show. And by that, yes, there were other times in previous episodes where there was wrestling, but it felt like they gave these matches time. It felt like there was more to look forward to in-ring wise than outside the ring. Yes, there were shenanigans outside the ring. Yes, there were promos and vignettes outside the ring, but this show was decently paced to the point to where everything did seem to mesh well, and nothing, at least a good maybe 80% of it felt like it belonged. The other 20% possibly felt like it was out of place, but it was okay. And the show started off with wrestling. Now, it's no surprise that I am right now, as of now, a fan of Toxic Attraction, because we opened up the show with Ember Moon and Mandy Rose, which now it seems that it's continuing on this trend of people coming from the main roster, going to NXT, and actually becoming something better than what the main roster did for them. Mandy Rose is another product of this experiment, of course. Now, granted, she's not someone who was on the indies and went back to NXT and remembered where they came from, like a Finn Balor, like a Samoa Joe, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in this situation, her going back to NXT did her some justice, because a lot of us in the IWC would probably feel that she went from NXT to the main roster a little too fast. And her going back completely proved that, because granted, where she got some experience on the main roster, this is one of the situations where I feel like her being around the previous iteration of NXT, being in that locker room and being around those who actually love the business and love the aspect of the professional wrestling, and not being tainted by the main roster stigma, has benefited her very well, because this match with Ember Moon showcased her in a much better way than the majority of what she did on the main roster did for her. So yeah, this was there was a lot more intensity in this. There was a lot more psychology from her standpoint on this end. And part of that was probably due to the fact that she was in the ring with Ember Moon. Nothing against Saray. I just feel like there may not be a lot of people who can actually have a credible match with Saray if they don't already have previous experience with wrestling within the indies. Because when you're in the indies, you get a lot more experience with a huge dynamic of people. You got people that have certain wrestling, certain skills or certain ways that they wrestle within the UK, within Japan, within Mexico, within Canada, within the US. There's a smorgasbord of just a professional wrestling dichotomy that tends to happen. So with Saray, unless she's in there with somebody who's actually been around the block, so to speak, you're not really going to have a good match, especially if you're someone who's coming in from a developmental standpoint where you really don't have that much experience, where you're coming in green as shit. This is one of the situations where Mandy Rose comes into play. That's not saying that she's bad, is that she doesn't have the experience wrestling with a multitude of people who wrestle a different style. I think she's so ingrained with the WWE style that she doesn't understand how to flip the switch in terms of going up against other people of a different style. But with Ember Moon, she's able to adapt to certain situations, especially in terms of WWE style. She can manipulate that situation to where it works for her, and then she can end up helping those who actually need to look good in the ring. And this showcased that very well. So a good showing by Mandy Rose. I want her to continue this. I don't want her to be completely fast tracked to the main event with Raquel Gonzalez. I think that she needs a good bit of singles matches under her belt before we get this match. I think we need to have a completely different build in terms of that, because I don't want everybody to get up in arms about, in a good way, about this match. Say, oh, Mandy's good. Of course she's going to do a good job against Raquel. I don't think we need that yet. I think we need to continue to build this. I think we need to continue to build, the feud between Raquel Gonzalez, Toxic Attraction, as well as Io Shirai, Zoe Stark, and Toxic Attraction as well. So let's make this a slow burn build and get to where we need to go. Well, in terms of Zoe Stark and Io Shirai, those titles need to come off of them like ASAP, because they're just not doing it for me. I don't know how all of you feel. If you feel the same way in that and you just don't think they deserve those titles or they need them, it's not necessary. If Zoe Stark was with another partner, probably. But Io Shirai does not need those tag titles. And this team in itself does not need those tag titles, because there are more deserving teams that deserve these titles. Casey Catanzaro, Caden Carter are one of them. So, yeah, that's just my personal opinion on that. But yeah, Mandy Rose goes over with a beautiful running knee. If that's her finishing move, I love it for her, as long as she continues to deliver it like that. So we'll see what happens from there. Now, in terms of Odyssey Jones and LA Knight, love LA Knight, love Odyssey Jones. So definitely surprised that LA Knight was not picked up in the draft. I feel like he could have gone. I mean, Austin Theory has been on there already, but I think he would have benefited more from being on NXT, right now, rather than him being drafted. I feel like LA Knight is perfect for the main roster. I think he's geared for the main roster. So unless you have plans to put the NXT title on LA Knight, there's no reason why he should still be there. I think that he needs to be on the main roster. I think that he's going to get overshadowed completely on all this new talent that they're trying to bring in, because if we end up getting Tommaso Ciampa and Braun Breaker, there's no telling where they're going to go with that. Personally, I definitely don't feel like they need to put the title on Braun Breaker yet. But we'll have to see, and we'll get into that after this. But yeah, Odyssey Jones, though, I don't like the fact that they're putting these solid black colors on him, because I think he's starting to look way too much like Mark Henry aesthetically. I like his dynamic of him having the bright colors and everything just being out. Shout out to the Ninja. See, that was a happy accident. Things tend to happen. But yes, Odyssey Jones, the way that he was brought in, with being a smiley baby face, with having the bright colors, it's something that was geared towards him that made him unique in that sense. But once you put him in just a complete straight black attire, it starts to make him look like everybody else, and he doesn't stand out from the crowd. So I don't know if it's because black is slimming and they want him to look a lot slimmer in a way. I don't think it's necessary. Put him back in the bright colors, have him be the smiley baby face, and then when you want him to have that aggressive demeanor, let it be a big payoff and not something that you're just trying to force on everybody. Because again, if you look back at certain episodes of Tag Me In, when we talked about NXT, when we start talking about the breakout tournament, we spoke about Odyssey Jones and how things could possibly turn for him. Like if he's just being a complete smiley baby face, happy-go-lucky, and the moment that aggression hits, it's going to shock everybody, because you can only poke the bear so much. That type of dynamic. But hopefully they'll get him back in the bright colors, and this is just maybe, a 1 or 2 off type of thing, because it just doesn't, the dark colors and the smiley baby face thing is just, it just doesn't work. It just does not mesh well at times. So, but Yeah, we get LA Knight going over by with a little bit of help from Andre Chase, which I actually appreciate that they're actually throwing in more feuds within feuds, I guess. So looks like we're going to be getting Andre Chase and Odyssey Jones down the line. Where LA Knight goes from there, I don't know, unless they're going to be doing something with Andre Chase and LA Knight, which I don't think they need to. I think LA Knight needs to start throwing its hat into the the NXT championship scene, because that's where he belongs, unless of course you're going to end up putting him in the North American championship scene, which I don't think that's a good idea at this point. So they know where he needs to be. That's one of your NXT main eventers right now. Keep them within that circle. So, but just like, a good segue, we talk about the NXT champion, the champ Ciampa, basically stating an open challenge for Halloween Havoc, which is in, I believe, 3 weeks. This disappointed me for a little bit. I mean, we already know the agenda. We're moving towards Ciampa versus Braun Breaker. But my thing is, he had an open challenge, and you had nobody in terms of LA Knight, in terms of Cameron Grimes, in terms of Pete Dunne, in terms of Kyle O'Reilly. Any of these guys who have been with who had previously worked towards this. This is what their goal was when Samoa Joe got that title. This was what they were aiming for. All 4 of these guys wanted that championship. It was no surprise. Now, all of a sudden, now that Braun Breaker's in the mix, now that we've got NXT 2.0 in the mix, none of these guys want to go for the title. It doesn't make any sense. There's zero consistency with that. Like, why would they? Ciampa is offering an open challenge to anybody, and none of them come out. That makes no sense, and it's not believable, period. And Braun Breaker's the only one. Like, there's no way you can tell me that he's scared. Everybody in the back was like, you know what? No, I'm going in there. I'm going to talk to Ciampa. No. And on top of that, and we'll get into that later. Well, no, we'll talk about it now. Even Joe Gacy had a situation after he won his match where he faced up against Ciampa to say, he wants to throw his hat in there. Again, throughout this entire show, we've only had 2 people that threw their hat in the ring to go up against Ciampa for the NXT championship. Makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense, because at this point you have Kyle O'Reilly and Von Wagner feuding with Ridge Holland and Pete Dunne, which is going to be a temporary thing. You have Cameron Grimes not even thinking about anything other than women in backstage. You have LA Knight focused on, well, you can at least make an argument for LA Knight because you can say that he's being preoccupied from that, but that still shouldn't stop him from saying something about the NXT championship, especially after he won. So that's just my 2 cents, especially with and of course Pete Dunne, like I said, him going around talking about he's the baddest man in NXT and everybody's afraid to face him. He never once decided to go out there. Again, makes no sense. But yeah, so now we have it pretty much officially set up. Braun Breaker and Tommaso Ciampa for NXT Championship at Halloween Havoc in 3 weeks. I would hope that they don't put the title on Braun Breaker, because that would make Ciampa's winning the title meaningless. That would make the whole initial Fatal 4-Way for the NXT Championship on the first episode of NXT 2.0 completely meaningless, and that means that they just set up that agenda and pushing it even more so, just to say fuck whatever Triple H had built up previously, and basically fuck the fans who believed in it. But speaking of Joe Gacy, he went up against Ike Manjiro, who was going to be a complete fan favorite down the line if he's not already. I think they need to start doing more stuff with him, storyline wise or feud wise, whatever. Get him more on the show to showcase more of that fan favorite character that can completely get over. Joe Gacy, I can't say I like or dislike him. I'm more so intrigued by his character because it's a sign of the times character, because he has this whole cancel culture, safe space character, and the dialogue that he has with it is very good. I do not mind it. He finds a way to insert everything that's relatable within that circle, within that spectrum of what's going on in terms of social media, in terms of the world, in terms of everything that has to do with just the complete dynamic of those who are within cancel culture, those who are trying to cancel people, those who feel like they need to have that safe space. It's just, yeah, it works for him. I just want to know where exactly they're going, because right now it it's hard. I mean, you could easily come up and say that, yeah, he's a heel who believes he's, doing the greater good. But after the match with Ikemenjiro, there was a stare down between himself and another guy. And clearly this guy is no face, because the whole dynamic of him, the no name guy who was in the who was, well, I guess the bleachers, if you want to call them now, that stared down Gacy. Yeah. So I don't know. And then of course after that you get the dialogue between Gacy and Ciampa, and he runs him down as if Ciampa's the heel. So that's, yeah, it's kind of hard. I'm still interested, very intrigued by it. Want to see where it goes. I'm just not sure what the fuck they're doing with him yet. So we'll have to see. We get Cora Jade and, well, what was supposed to be, I believe, I think it was Virginia Ferry. Correct me down in the comments below if I'm wrong, but I believe it was Virginia Ferry. But that didn't happen because Frankie Monet came, beat down Ferry, and basically started the match with Cora Jade herself. I thought this was going to be a squash match between Cora Jade and Virginia Ferry, but clearly they wanted to make this an actual match with Frankie Monet, and I'm not sure why this happened, unless it was one of those situations where Frankie Monet was just trying to get an easy win, after her loss to Raquel Gonzalez. But Cora Jade picks up a surprise victory with basically it was a roll up for the 3 count, and then that's it. So I don't know what they're doing with Frankie Monet. I don't know if they're going to make her enhancement talent. She's another person who needs to be on the main roster. I don't think that it's necessary for her to be in NXT. I think she would benefit more from having matches with women already established on the main roster, because she is one person who is also established, with this. So Cora Jade makes sense to be in NXT. I think she's 20, so she's very young in all of this. And I wish they would have showcased her against Virginia Ferry so we can actually see what she's able to do, rather than give her just a surprise victory over Frankie Monet. But luckily she was not squashed, so that's another plus on this situation. So we'll see where that goes. I am interested to see where Cora Jade goes from here. Not sure how the whole skater gimmick is gonna fit in with everything, but we'll see. And keep Trey Baxter from becoming a superhero, if that's where they're going with that. From the dialogue from, I think it was the first or second episode of NXT 2.0. So keep Trey Baxter where he needs to be and keep giving him good matches. Then of course we get Pete Dunne and Cameron Grimes. Well, before that, we actually ended up getting, I believe it was before this, we got a vignette of Duke Hudson, because I was asking last week, where the fuck is Duke Hudson? And now he's gonna have this fucking poker-esque gimmick. I mean, I get how he said he treated in the ring like it was poker and gambling and all this other shit. I'm not convinced. It's not something that I really care for, because I think his character that was portrayed before was perfectly fine. It was simple. It was heelish. It was that, to me, that was necessary, because I had the makings of somebody who was going to be a top heel within NXT and potentially on the main roster. They're doing the same thing that they did to Andre Chase. Andre Chase did not need a character change. He was perfectly fine as well. He would have gotten over on basically his in-ring ability. He probably would have looked vanilla character-wise, but this is no better for him. So for Duke Hudson, same thing. Unless they pull a Tony D'Angelo, have me completely write this person off, write the character and gimmick off, and then surprise me. But we'll see. But Pete Dunne, Cameron Grimes, no surprise here. Good match. I wish there was more time on it though, because but at the same time, this was pretty much a setup for the feud that Pete Dunne and Ridge Holland have with Von Wagner and Kyle O'Reilly, which I'm not sold on Von Wagner. I feel like he emotes weird. He can't really deliver lines. It's just no. I don't. None of this is very believable, especially with the fact that, and they tried with the whole Kyle O'Reilly thing, saying that he didn't want anybody to have his back. He doesn't really trust anybody. They should have kept that, and they should have been more aggressive with that. So I don't. There's no reason for you to pair Von Wagner with Kyle O'Reilly, especially after the fact of where we pretty much had the same situation happen when Bobby Fish came back and he tried to help Kyle O'Reilly, and Kyle O'Reilly was basically like, "No, I don't want any help. I want to do this on my own. This is what's necessary for me. Nothing against you. I just got to do this for myself." And they pretty much beat you over the head during this feud to basically be like, you know what? Von Wagner and Kyle O'Reilly are going to go up against Ridge Holland and Pete Dunne. Granted, Kyle O'Reilly seems reluctant, but I have a feeling that they're probably going to make him accepting of Von Wagner down the line, which is stupid because I think Kyle O'Reilly needs to focus on his singles career and should have been the first in line to challenge Ciampa for that open challenge at Halloween Havoc. Because at least you would have had some type of buffer between Ciampa and Braun Breaker, and you could have spent time building up Braun Breaker. Again, nothing against Braun Breaker. I happen to like him. Build good. His in-ring is good. Promo's good. There's nothing wrong with him. I just think that they should not fast-track this match between him and Ciampa until further down the line. It just makes more sense that way. Of course, that's my opinion. Some people may feel that way. Some people may not feel that way. But I'm not somebody who's going to say that Braun Breaker doesn't deserve to be an NXT champion. I think that he has the look for it. No problem at all. He can probably carry the show on his own. But that's not something that you need to fast track right now. Build him up. Let him become a fan favorite. Let him become believable to everybody instead of being somebody that you can obviously see is being completely jetpacked to the main event of NXT. So just have things happen organically. You've had Pete Dunne, Kyle O'Reilly, LA Knight, Cameron Grimes within the scene already. Let this be your main event scene for right now. Take whatever plans you had that they had for Samoa Joe and just transition them over in a way that works for Ciampa. So that way you can help build all the new guys that's coming in to have them organically come up and become the main event. Do something with the North American Championship that you're not doing now. It shouldn't just be about Swerve and Santos. It should be other people trying to vie for that championship because that's supposed to be your mid-card title. Nothing says you have to catapult these guys straight to the main event since they're just coming in. I get it. I get you want to, transition everything out, take the old NXT and put this new NXT. That's fine if that's what you want to do. But don't make it so fucking obvious that you want to get the old out because you don't like the way it was done by somebody else, even though it garnered positive reactions from the wrestling community. Don't disrespect the wrestling community like that. Don't disrespect your fans or the fans of NXT like that. But Pete Dunne goes over after Kyle O'Reilly tries to get involved and then gets thrown across the announce table. But he and Rich Holland stand tall. And then you get a moment between Von Wagner and Kyle O'Reilly after that. So, yeah, we'll see what, I mean, we know what happens. A match is set up between Pete Dunne, Rich Holland versus Kyle O'Reilly and Von Wagner. Don't really care. Not a fan of it. Pete Dunne needs to be focused on the main event with Tommaso Ciampa. So from there, we actually end up getting a backstage segment, which is very weird, with MSK being interviewed by McKenzie, and then you get GYV, which of course this needs to be your feud for the NXT tag team titles. Everybody can be integrated within the tag team title situation, but this needs to be a match that is set up just between these two. They and of course they kind of voiced that using GYV, saying how MSK found a way to weasel their way out of facing them 2-on-2 for the tag team titles. And so of course MSK said, instead of making this a fatal four, I want to make it elimination style. Previously, this was supposed to be an 8-man tag match with, I believe it was MSK and Briggs and Jensen against Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams against GYV. And then they switched that to an NXT tag team title match, which, again, still don't understand how the shit happened like that, but whatever. And we'll get into it later when we talk about the main event. But spoiler alert, I'm not a fan of these type of tag matches because it just the dynamic of it and the way that it's set up makes zero sense. It makes absolutely zero sense. But we'll get into that later. But we get the debut of Tony D'Angelo, and during all the vignettes that he's had, I completely cared less. It did not win me over. I thought it was one of those cheesy things that was going to happen. I gave, all power and respect to the fact that they're actually trying to build characters, but his character was not somebody that stood out to me. It's not somebody that I was like, okay, whatever. But he gets out there, still felt pretty generic as far as his entrance goes. But once he got in the ring, he has a presence that's very interesting. And it's not like he's in there doing anything over the top or overly special. It's just something about him that's very, very interesting, and it's magnetic. And now I wasn't sure what they were going to do, because it seemed like he was somebody that they were going to go with as far as like a heel, but it seems more so that he had a bit of a face reaction. So this is the same kind of thing that I had with Joe Gacy. I'm not sure where they're going with this character, but nonetheless, it's very intriguing. So now, of course, he goes over. Very impressive as far as his match goes. Looks good in the ring. Not sure if the attire, they can probably change it along the way. Who knows what's going to happen? But yeah, as far as the presentation outside of the ring, as far as like entrance, gear, everything, it does feel very generic, but his presence and his in-ring, very good. So I appreciate that at the very least. Now, after this, they had some bullshit with I'm forgetting what the fuck her name is, but Lash, whatever. Clearly not a fan. I could care less. I don't think it's necessary. We don't need it. Get the fuck out of here. But yeah, she had a segment where she was talking about how the next interview, whatever, was going to be good, or but we had Tony D'Angelo interject himself into that meeting and basically say, you should interview me. So we'll see what happens. And then she had some stupid ass line about, I think I've seen him on the Sopranos movie. Stupid. But yeah. So previously we had something with Persia Parati and and Indy Hartwell walking through the hallway and talking about whatever. And then they end up seeing one of the rooms where they walked into one. It's Mei Ying and Boa and a whole bunch of smoke. I'm not sure what the fuck they were doing. It looked weird when they walked in, but and apparently they set up this match. So now it's no surprise. I don't give a shit about Mei Ying or Boa for that matter. Xia Li was the only thing that was holding up, that was basically had me holding Tian Sha in high regard, because I don't like the completely supernatural characters that you showcase as completely OP in a way. And because that's pretty much how they built Mei Ying, where she would sit on, her little throne or whatever, and then she would, blow the smoke, or she would, do the do like whatever choke that she did that would take people out like instantaneously. But then you get when she's in the ring and it's nothing special. It's not something that's believable. She's still, I think she's a lot shorter than a lot of the other people. And she doesn't really have an imposing or intimidating demeanor in terms of in ring. Even her offense, same thing. So everything that they've done previously gets thrown out the window because it just makes it completely unbelievable, because nothing is credible about it. So her and Boa are now just like, they're going to get lost in the shuffle as far as I'm concerned. And without Xia Li, because she's been drafted to the main roster now, there's really no reason why this should even be a thing now. Because they did a shit job with trying to build Boa up during that whole time, because they focused so much on Xia Li instead of focusing on both of them. It's not like you were going to overshadow one over the other. They're two different divisions. One's male, one's female. You can build them both at the same time. It's not going to hurt. And it wouldn't have, especially now. This would have done him a huge favor now had they built him up previously alongside Xia Li, instead of having him look like he was just a heavy. So, I don't know. But I just did not care. I just did not care. I don't care about the winners of this match. Just whatever. It's just, but Indy did go over. So they're giving her a push, and apparently it looks like we're gonna get Persia and Indy vying for the NXT Women's Tag Team titles. So we'll see what happens with that. But it looks like this is a good makeup as well, because they both seem. I think they're both Australian or New Zealand. Don't crucify me on this, but they might make up for a good tag team, because I think their dynamic may be really good. Most of the time, I would probably look at this and I would be like, somebody else is just kind of shoving down our throats right now. But this felt like it was more organic with these two rather than a lot of other people that they're trying to introduce. So we'll see where that goes. We get a furious Raquel Gonzalez, and just for Scoot, hey Raquel, we get a furious Raquel Gonzalez who was completely heated thanks to the previous events of last week, where she got beat down by Toxic Attraction after her match with Frankie Monet. And she basically threw down the gauntlet and ran down Mandy Rose, basically stating that, she's only been there for a couple months and she's been dominating the women's division for almost a year so far. I don't know what they're going to do with this. I would hope that they throw some more people into the mix in terms of the women's championship, because the way that it's looking, with Toxic Attraction getting a huge push and the way things are looking at the moment, it's looking like they're going to end up putting that title on Mandy Rose a lot sooner than they need to, because I don't think they've built up anybody else to come in and vie for that championship. because in terms of NXT 2.0, they really haven't been building up the main event portion of the women's division because they've done a shit job of that. Whereas before, you would kind of know what you were getting in terms of the women's division because you would see the direction that they were going. We knew where the women's tag team titles were going. We kind of had an idea of where they were going. They had a direction there, because you had, especially when you had Raquel and Dakota win those, it was more of a surprise. You had Shotzi and Ember take those off of them. And then from there, you had the Way take them off of Shotzi and Ember. And then you pretty much had other people in the mix. You had Ember and Shotzi. You still had Dakota and Raquel. You had Casey Catanzaro and Kaden Carter. You had at least 3 teams within that vying for those championships. So from there, now we pretty much just have Io Shirai and Zoe Stark wrongfully being NXT Women's Tag Team Championships, NXT Women's Tag Team Champs without really any competitors outside of Toxic Attraction, that being Gigi Dolan and JC Jade, because we haven't seen anything from Kaden Carter and Casey Catanzaro at all. Ever since they lost, we haven't seen haven't heard a peep. So the clear agenda is Io Shirai and Zoe Starks getting another match against Toxic Attraction, Gigi Dolan, and JC Jane, of course, because it seems like that's where they're going. That's the writing on the wall so far. And in terms of Raquel Gonzalez and the NXT Women's Championship, they had built up the whole thing of Frankie Monet getting a title shot against Raquel Gonzalez, which they postponed for, I believe, like 2 weeks. And then let that kind of just play out. But immediately threw Mandy Rose into the mix by, throwing her hat into there, but nobody else. And that's what tends to worry me a little bit. I know Scoot himself he's already stated, if Mandy wins, he's going to be big mad. So we'll see what happens. There was an onset of a beatdown that was going to happen, but of course we get Io Shirai and Zoe Stark running into, to the side, to the aid of Raquel Gonzalez. So pretty much we're going to end up getting a 6-woman tag match. No surprise there. And we'll probably build more to a rematch for the women's tag team titles, which Io and Zoe will probably lose, because that next going is going to be for Gigi and JC. So that I'm fine with. That title change, I'm completely fine with. So, but as far as Mandy, give her some more matches. Give Raquel at least one more title defense against somebody before throwing that title on Mandy. If that's the direction, which I think it is, but we'll see. But build Mandy up first. Build Mandy up and allow her to get more matches under her belt and her to build that intensity and that character under the Toxic Attraction banner. So that way, when she does win, it won't look like it was a complete fucking agenda to just do that automatically. Give Raquel a little bit more respect than that. So now, of course, throughout the night, we had vignettes of Legato Fantasma as well as Hit Row. You had Legato Fantasma basically saying what the only thing that it really could say is that Swerve kind of ran off after he got drafted to SmackDown, that now he's dodging Santos. He hasn't defended, which is true. He hasn't defended his title in a very long time. So I'm not sure if he's hurt or something was going on. But yeah, I expected more from Swerve's North American Championship run than this. So so right now it's looking like we're about to get Santos with that title. So hopefully he does more with it. I personally think Santos needs to be within the NXT Championship picture because he has the makeup for it. Legato Fantasma has the makeup for it. They also could have been someone. They also could have been a fucking stable that could have been drafted to the main roster as well. Personally, I think that there's still more they can do in NXT, obviously, but I think that they're so well put together within this stable that they would do well on the main roster if pushed right. That's the key thing, if pushed right. So, but if that's not the case, then yes, let's put the North American Championship on Santos. Let's get some momentum behind Legato Fantasma, so that way we could potentially get him vying for the NXT Championship, rightfully. So we'll see where that goes. But then we get to the main event, and this is one of the things that I just do not like about the main event. And that's a situation where, this main event and any tag match that incorporates this whole fatal four-way aspect, unless it's a complete free for all or no disqualification, where everybody is going in like a ladder match or cage match, elimination chamber, hell in a cell, whatever the case. Anytime you have a legit tag match where it's 4 teams involved and you only have 2 participants within this match, and you can tag in anybody from any team, it's just weird. It makes no sense, and it's not believable. I've always hated this aspect of it, especially if you're going to have a tag team title match. If you're going to have that, if it's going to be a legit match, that's a non DQ match. That's that's not a non DQ match. That's not a Texas Tornado match. That's not that has no gimmick. That will have all team members wrestling at the same time. Then have a legit match that only has 2 teams, or at least have 3 teams and have 3 men from each team wrestling at the same time, and then tagging in and out, because it just doesn't make any sense. Like it's just completely stupid, because I don't know who thought about it, but do away with it, because to me it's dumb. I hate it. 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 Which of course made me dislike this match. Even when it got to the end, I completely disliked it. I hate the fact that GYV was eliminated. It made no sense. I felt like if you were going to do this, you might as well just, no. I get that they're trying to push, Briggs and Jensen. I get it. It makes sense. Whatever. But let's get what was already established out the way first. Let's get our GYV and MSK match first, and then start to build towards this other shit. Because now, even after this match, MSK goes over, by the way. Now we're going to get MSK versus Imperium. So I don't know if this is a slow burn, for the end result to be MSK versus GYV, but the more they push this back, the more this feud between MSK and GYV loses its luster. I'm just saying. So give everybody what they want. MSK versus GYV for the NXT Tag Team Championships. Let's go. But either way, this is NXT 2.0 in a nutshell. Better than it was the previous weeks. It seems like it's getting better. So I will not say it's a trash show. I left out the Diamond Mine shit for a reason, because I don't care. Also, there you go. Now, I don't know if Bivens is watching Scoot shit, but if you stumble across this, Bivens, I will say this about Diamond Mine, though. I will never deny, disrespect, or disparage in-ring work. All these guys, ladies, of course, Ivy Niles, they can all be very impressive. I will never take away from that. But you're attached to Malcolm Bivens. And me and Malcolm are officially, unofficially arch nemesis, however you want to call it, whatever. But left him out for a reason. There's your 5 seconds, Bivens. Anyway, NXT 2.0 in a nutshell. Not a bad show. Not the best show, but still not a bad show. It seems like they're going in a better direction. Hopefully, they keep this consistent with keeping the in-ring stuff, giving it more time, keeping the pacing very well. But I have nothing really bad to say about the show. So let's keep it moving. So whether you loved it, hate it, don't forget to rate it, comment down below all your questions, concerns, whatever, etc., etc., etc. Hit the notification bell for all the updates and all the uploads of when Tag drops. Tag me in, hot tag, Scoot with the scoops, Scoots wrestling this month, Jaeger's after dark elevation, all that good shit. But most importantly, don't forget to mother effing subscribe. So until next time, to all you beautiful mother effers, Tag the fucketh.